All right.
We're good.
I think we are. Can you guys hear us?
Thumbs up if you can. Okay, cool.
Okay. We got a few different pieces of technology working to make sure you can see everything.
Well, welcome everyone. We're really excited about our first immersive virtual program this evening. So thank you guys for attending and participating. And thank you again for rescheduling with us. I have here my friend Brandi, and she's going to be leading us this evening. I'm going to have Brandi kind of tell us a little bit about herself before we get started, and then we'll get into the logistics of how we're going to do the evening.
Hey, everybody. My name is Brandi Harrison. I have probably been doing charcuterie boards for easily like 10, 12 years. I think it's something that started with my mom. We traveled a lot. And so a lot of other cultures kind of do, a board-ish for dinner. And so I was always kind of used to that. And then before really charcuterie boards kind of blew up on Instagram, I had already kind of been doing a few, but then I took a class and really kind of learned some basics, which is a lot of what I'm going to share with you tonight, and have been doing them ever since. And so in my real job, I produce commercials and shows. And so I'm in the media production space. And also we are at our Airbnb that we have in Atlanta. And so my husband and I manage this as well as each of our own companies. And so very busy, but this is something that is like really triggers my creativity and helps me relax. And surprisingly, this is a lot of what I have in my kitchen kind of already. And so with just a few things, I hope to show you how you can have charcuterie boards on a regular basis.
Great, great. And so for everyone at home, it's going to be, as usual, very casual. I'll be working the chat. So if you have any specific questions for Brandi, you can either raise your hand or throw it in the chat, and then she'll try to answer that as she's moving along here. We are going to have a contest. So towards the end, we'll give instructions on the phone number to send a picture of your board, your finished board, the phone number. So we'll have judging before the class ends. Okay. So we'll go ahead and get started.
All right. First off, I've got two cameras working. So I've got one, both of them are pinned in the Zoom. So if you want to adjust your viewing to be only the presenter, you'll see both of the main two screens if you want that to fill your screen. But you'll have me on one side, and then I've got this overhead camera with everything that I'm working. So you guys I gave you a menu as well as a few step-by-steps to think about. And whatever you purchased, we're going to use today. So we're going to go kind of in order of that menu that you got. We'll start with cheese and then meats and then all the additional add-ons, going through all of those sections. And we're going to build a full board. Now, I want to start out with a little bit of history and a little bit of board maintenance. So these are all boards that I just have on hand because I make charcuterie way too often. But let's talk about boards a bit. So you don't need to spend a lot for a good board. IKEA has great boards that you can order, but also if you find something at like Target or any place that looks decorative, all you need to do is put a piece of parchment paper down and you can use pretty much anything for a board. So don't feel stuck. All of these boards, I'll say, if you look here, you'll see that they're a little bit dry. So board maintenance, you can just buy some cutting board oil and just take a little bit on a piece of paper towel and just wipe it in. You want to do this a few days before you're going to use your board so it has time to soak in. Do not use vegetable oil. Do not use olive oil. Don't use any other oils on your board because those can actually get rancid. And so cutting board oil is a there's a word for it, but it's basically a non-edible product, but it will moisturize all your boards and keep them beautiful. As far as sizes go, I'll use something like this if I'm just like me and a best friend, right? The two of us are sitting, having a bottle of wine. This is a perfect size for two people. This one and this one both came from IKEA. This was probably maybe like $35, $40, which is really pretty cheap for a board this size. Again, this I might use for like 4 people around. And then my 2 big boys. So this I actually got at Pier 1 a decade ago. Again, it's decorative. And so I just put parchment paper down when I'm going to use this one. But this is when I'm doing a party, right? I want this to be the centerpiece. And so I'm going to have a easily 5, 6 to 10 people around this. As well as the board I'm going to make in front of me today. This board actually had made, but this is a good size for 4 to 6 people. So one of the first things you want to think about is how many people are you feeding? And that will let you know, do I need 2 pieces of cheese, different kinds of cheese? Do I want 2 meats? Do I need 4? That sort of thing. For each person, I think of at least 2 or 3 ounces of cheese and meats. And so that's how you kind of double up. And the style of board I'm going to show you is what I call a harvest board. So it's going to feel like a plethora. It's going to feel like an overflow, like a cornucopia of food. One more thing on board maintenance. If you look at this screen, you'll see that this one has a crack. I think you can see that. This is a board I can't use anymore. Okay, so once your board has cracked, you don't want to use it anymore because it will actually get food or oil in there. And again, it'll turn rancid and start spreading bacteria. So don't use a board that's cracked, but any other kind of board, even if it looks a little old, put some oil on it and it'll be brand new. All right. So first step for our board, we're going to give our board some structure. So I've got our board here and I'm going to start with some ramekins that I know I'm going to fill with a few things later. Ramekins come in all different sizes. This can get a little crazy with how many I have purchased over the years, but really find things that you like. And you don't need to spend a lot, but think about different sizes. I love this one because it kind of has a Spanish feel. If I'm doing certain olives, I really think about what kind of ramekin I'm going to put it in. But I think I'm going to use these 4. So on your board, if you have anything that you know you want to put into a container, this might be olives, this might be a little hummus, some pimento cheese, anything you'd like, start there. And we're just going to separate these out. I just want to give my board a bit of structure so I can start building off of. Okay, so that's my placement. And I'm going to start there. That's step 1 with structure. Okay. So now let's talk cheese and meats, the whole reason we're here, right? There's so many things that we could say. We could spend an hour of the class just talking about cheese and meat pairings. Know that charcuterie actually means cured meat in French, right? So for me, if I'm doing a real charcuterie board, I want to have meat on my board. But to me, the cheese is really the big thing. And you guys are into wine, you understand flavor profiles, you understand pairings. This is just another place for you to kind of explore those same sensibilities. So for cheeses today, I've selected a Robusto Gouda. It's a beautiful hard cheese. And I've also gotten a truffle Gouda. Oh, I did 2 Goudas. I didn't realize that to this moment. I've got a truffle Gouda. This is a little bit softer cheese. I did a blue, and then I had a wedge of goat cheese still left. So we're going to work with those to start with. So here's a piece of my Robusto Gouda. So when I first get a piece of cheese, one of the things I'll often do is ask the cheesemonger, hey, how should I cut this? Or I'll watch them cut it if it's a new cheese that I haven't used. But that will give you an idea of how you want to serve it. So with this cheese, you can see that it has a plastic edge. That's literally wax on it that they use on the rind. So I'm going to cut that off to start because it is not edible for a guest. And then if I start to try to cut this like in strips or something, you're going to see, well, of course it didn't, but often this will chip up pretty easily, which tells me it wants to be in pieces. So you can just take it and break it really easily like that. You could take your knife and just with your point, make your little chunks. And when you taste it, there are beautiful little, oh, I just forgot the name of them. They're a little amino acid in this cheese that almost like pops a little bit in your mouth. And it's absolutely lovely. So there's my cheese. And for this one, I'm just going to pick a side and start adding it in. Now, since this is a bigger board, I usually will put 1 or 2 piles. Actually, I should say 2 or 3 piles of the cheese so that you don't necessarily have to reach all the way across in order to get any. All right, so that's cheese 1. The second cheese I've got is a truffle Gouda. So this is a little bit of a softer cheese. And since it's a truffle, it's a great full mouth kind of feel. So I want to give you a little bit more of a chunk on it, but this is one that I can cut really nicely. So again, it's got a wax rind. So I'm going to take that off. And then I'm just going to make cubes out of this one. For most of your cheeses, you're going to want to cut them while they're cold. That's going to help you make any shapes that you want to make. And it won't bend on you and move around a whole lot. And then what you can do if you pre-cut, even if you build your whole board ahead of time, right? But if you pre-cut, you can then put it back in the refrigerator, let them firm up a bit, and then build out your board with all your pre-cut cheese. All right, so those are all my bits of truffle. Try this. Yeah?
It's got a strong.
It's a full truffle feel, right?
Yeah.
Both of these cheeses, I'll say, I just got it at Whole Foods. So it's not, we have a great cheese monger here in Atlanta that I only recently found in the past 2 years. And I've started to go to them more often to get really, if I want to do something really special, I'll go to them, right? But this, you can get really great cheeses, Trader Joe's, even Kroger, which is a store we have here, but any sort of mid-range or up stores, they're really doing well with cheeses. So I've got one blue. I always like to think of my cheeses of some sort of category, whether I'm going to do a hard, a soft, and a blue, or a brie and a permanent. Like, try to hit a few different notes on your cheese selections, but you really can't go wrong in how you pair them together. They don't need to all be from Spain. They don't need to all be from cow's milk, right? So think of different varieties. For this blue, I'm going to put the whole entire piece up, but I'm going to show you something a little bit later that's going to help make sure people eat it. So I'm just taking off the piece and I'm going to put it right here. I'm going to put some honey in here in a little bit, so it'll be a nice pairing with that blue. And then finally, I just want to show you this. This is a little piece of goat cheese that I had, and this is actually a drunken goat. So this rind here is actually edible, but they take the entire piece of the entire chunk of goat cheese and they either wrap it in grape leaves or they dip the entire thing in red wine. And so that's what makes this purple edge on it. And so this purple rind here is part of the cheese's story. So we want to make sure we show that if we're going to put this cheese out. So what I would do is follow the line of the triangle and just make a few more triangles out of it until I get to something like this. That's a nice individual piece. And then I'm going to cut these a little bit further down. And then I want to be able to display that rind. So I'm just going to stack them a bit, right? And put them, can you see that?
Now, are you doing anything specific with your placement on the board, or is it more just evenly, or?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So I'm not, when I build a very organic looking board. It doesn't have straight lines. I'm not, following any rules. The only thing I really want to make sure is that at least something's within reach for everybody. So I'm just going to follow the rim on this ramekin and I've put that goat cheese rind up, right? So that's a part of the story that gets told for that piece. So all of our cheeses are down. So whatever cheeses you've selected, go ahead and cut those and put them on your board. Again, find a spot around your structure that's already on your board and use that to guide you as to placement. If you're making a solo plate, just put all of them in a pile is totally fine. Or if your inclination says, hey, I want a little bit more structure, I want to put these in a line, do it. It's not going to go wrong. All right. Okay. So let's move on to the meats. All right. So I've got 3 meats for us. I'm going to start here. So this one is a pepper encrusted salami. It's a very easy sort of meat. If you have folks who aren't comfortable eating a lot of cured meat, this is an easy one. Any sort of pepper crusted, herb crusted, it's just going to have a little bit more flavor. It comes pre-cut like this. So all I'm doing is folding it in half and in half again. And I'll hold that while I grab another one. Same deal, in half and in half again. And all I'm doing is stacking them. Okay. So what you see here is just multiple folds stacked on top of each other. So it's a beautiful look without any effort. And again, when I place them, just going to follow the curve of my ramekin that's already there. So I like that one for a few. I'm going to pull a few from here and do another section. Let's see. Let's go back here.
Someone said Boar's Head has a good truffle goat at Publix.
Yes.
And another one said that Aldi has a lot of boards for sale.
So Aldi is a hidden gem, definitely. I haven't been that often, but I do have friends that go all the time. So yes, Aldi's another great place. So for that one, I again just picked kind of a few spots to put that herb crusted salami down. So typically I'd also do a prosciutto or something that's a bit more fatty than this salami. I didn't have time to get an actual prosciutto, but this is a coppa, which is not similar in flavor profile, but that kind of fatty texture is there. When you have something like a prosciutto and it comes in a full sheet of prosciutto, always put it in the freezer for like 5 minutes. It will just firm up a little bit and cut that sheet in half. That sheet is almost always too much for any one person to take a bite. And if you've ever bitten into prosciutto and try to you're going to look crazy, right? So we don't want that for a guest. So you should end up in something about this size. And so you can think of this as prosciutto. This is coppa, which is a beautiful cured meat. It is more of a meaty flavor though. So this isn't a meat that I always choose. I like it because of the fattiness and it's a different sort of flavor profile than prosciutto. It has that same salty, fatty feel, but it's a little bit different. So, but with something like this that's halfway falling apart, I'm not going to get a beautiful fold like this, right? So all I'm going to do to manipulate it is just fold it. And then I'm going to kind of, if you can see on the vertical, I'm just going to fold it on itself. So it kind of gives me a fanned out appearance. And here's another one. So it's kind of, right, fatty, fold that in half. And then I'm going to fold one in and one out. And so I'm just going to stack those. And what I'm really doing is profiling that fatty texture that's on top, that's fanned out. Again, with prosciutto, you're going to have that fatty edge along one side, fold it in half, have that fatty edge flanned out, and that will give you a beautiful piece of meat there. So I'm going to put a few there, and then let's come back here for a few more pieces. So I always want to think about how someone's going to grab in to reach something, right? With all of these, I'm giving you a perfect bite. Let me choose one. Like this is a perfect piece that you can easily grab really nicely as you're biting into that board. All right, final meat topic. This is a Genoa salami. Genoa is an easy, beautiful selection to put on. You'll get them at any store. It has, some of them are a little bit spicy, so you'll see actual peppercorn within them. But this one is just larger. It's larger than any other pieces, and it's very thin. I'm going to show you guys how to do a salami rose. So this is the thing. This is the thing that oftentimes people want to learn. And I'm going to show you, and then we're going to talk about a salami rose a bit, okay? So you've got a few options. Salami roses work better when it's a very thin piece like this that you can manipulate easy. So first option, let me pull this out. First option, I'm going to take a few of these folded in half and lay them with just a small, like 1/3 overlap, right? And lay them down my cutting board. We'll do 5 and see how this goes. And so now I'm going to do is start rolling. I don't want to really tight roll, but I just want to make sure I'm picking up the next one and I'm rolling on top of each other. And let's see how this 4 goes. So that gives me, and I can kind of open it up. That's one version of a salami rose, right? And you can place that right in the center of your board. That's one option. Another option is done with a glass. So this is a champagne glass that has a very tiny flute at the top, very tiny opening. And I'm going to take my same meat and I'm going to put about half inside and then bend it out to be outside. Can you see that? So I'm using the rim of this glass to help me build my frame for my rose. And I'm overlapping the pieces just a bit. So I'm doing 3 pieces on that first layer, right? That overlap on top of each other. And let's do another 3. And I think that'll give you a good idea what it's going to look like. I should have said, obviously, you're washing your hands, right? Because you're going to manipulate all of this food. Okay, so that is all my 3. Now I'm going to turn this over onto my board, and it comes right out, right? And you can fix that a little bit how you want. But it's a beautiful centerpiece. Now I'll tell you why I don't make salami roses. So you'll never see a salami rose on my board. For me, because it's not inviting for you to dig in and eat that. It is beautiful. I will give that to you. But I want everything on my board to be edible to my guests and for them to obviously feast with their eyes, but also dig in and grab something. So to grab a piece out of this, if someone manages to get a piece, now the whole thing kind of falls apart. And so it doesn't look as pretty anymore. So I typically don't do a salami rose, but please do a salami rose. Those are 2 ways to do a salami rose. For this meat, what I would normally do is a simple fold, just like I did for that first one, and do what a lot of people on Instagram will call a salami river, if you want to name it. Everything has to be named these days. So all I'm doing literally is just folding it in half, and in half again, and I'm stacking them on top of each other. And that gives me that kind of accordion river look right in front. And I'm gonna pick another spot and plop these right on down. So you see how those ramekins automatically help give us something to build off of with anything else that we use. Everything else after this is just going to be filling in holes with the variety of our products that we'll have. All right. So we are a little more than halfway there. We've got meats and cheeses on the board. Any other questions or anything?
I have a question. So how much of this can actually be prepped ahead of time? I know you said that you can prep the cheese and then put the cheese back in the fridge, but with the meats and things like that, is it realistic to be able to, let's say, make a board the night before?
That's a little tough. So I wouldn't do the night before.
Okay.
That's a little bit too long for your meat and cheeses to sit out. The cheese, you're prepping it so that you're cutting it when it's optimally cold. That's going to help, especially even a softer cheese like this truffle is going to be a lot easier to cut. And I would cut it the way I want and then put it in parchment paper and then put it in a Ziploc bag, put it in my refrigerator, and that's ready to go. These meats, I would do them, I would build my board probably an hour before you're going to want to eat it. That way, everything has time to come up to room temperature by the time your guests come, and you've done all the manipulation that you need to do. So I would do that more in real time as you're doing everything.
So even assembling the board the night before is not a good idea, just because you want to preserve the freshness of everything. Yeah,
because for instance, we're about to get to olives and a few other things. Those usually live in a brine. You want them to stay in that brine for as long as possible before you're taking them out. If you can fit a full-on board in your refrigerator, you probably have got more flexibility than otherwise. But you just want to think about refrigeration and things being at room temperature by the time you're eating. So I usually build my boards day of. Even one year for our Christmas party, I did a 6-foot board. I built it the same day. Yeah, even at that size, it's still, there's a certain amount of freshness that you want same day.
And some things don't come back down to room temperature with the same texture and flavor.
Yeah. So you're manipulating that up and down. That's a great point. All right. One more thing I want to show you is always a fan favorite. If you've ever had peppadew peppers. So these are not spicy. They have a lot of flavor to them. All I've done is filled them with goat cheese and added some chiffoned basil, and I've put them back in their own juice just to hang out. So for this, you want to make sure that you're using just a plain goat cheese. There's goat cheese with, cranberries and all these different flavors. The peppadew has enough flavor for you. So just use a plain goat cheese. I literally just take it out of its container, put it right into a Ziploc. I've cut the end here, and I'm just going to use that to slide into the hole, squeeze that in, and done. So it is a easy little appetizer. And folks love it. And it's something that I really like to encourage people to try that's different, that there might be like, oh, I'm gonna eat something really hot. It's not. I would never do that to you, but it's a great flavor profile. So I'm gonna use this larger ramekin here to fill this. And I want that basil in there too, because that's just gonna help with a lot of flavor. So this has probably been sitting, if you're doing this all at the same time, do this first, something like this, and then put it in the refrigerator until you're actually ready to build. That's the same way, like if I was going to do pimento cheese on my board, I'd make my pimento cheese first, put it back in the refrigerator. All right, so that fills that out. Okay, so that is all of our cheeses. We actually have 4 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different kinds of cheeses on our board here. Now let's switch and go to the vehicle. So what are we going to use to stack this flavor on top of? Okay, we've got plenty of options. Let's talk first about crackers. There's so many cracker options. I'm going to show you 2 of my faves and then give you a few more alternatives. These crackers here, you can see, are a fig and olive cracker, always on my board, every time. Like, we'll never not have a board without them. Here is the label in case you're interested. So it's a fig and olive. This company actually has quite a few different styles of crackers. All of them are fantastic. This is just, it's such a good cracker. It has great texture on its own and it adds so much, but it also doesn't detract. Does that make sense? Doesn't take away from the flavor of everything else that you're doing. So I'm going to put a few there right in the center. And I'm going to come over here. And if you notice, I'm using the edge of them to stack them. So I'm stacking them on top of each other just how they are in the container and using a lot of that vertical height instead of laying them out and having them take up a lot of room. I tend to like a vertical stack. All right, so that's one option. These are just wafers. I like to call them communion wafers because they are salted, but there's not a lot of flavor at all. If I'm doing cheese with a lot of flavor profile, I'll tend to do more of these, but they're just a solid, good choice. So I'm gonna put a few here. Again, I tend to stack vertically so that they're not taking up as much space. We're gonna prop that piece of meat. How am I doing on time? Oh, good. Okay. And then here's one more salted one. So this is a smaller cracker. These I love to use if I'm doing pimento cheese, if I'm doing any kind of dip. They're just great. And I like them kind of to edge my board and kind of overflow off the side. Am I still on the screen? Yeah, you can see those. So I'm just picking corners really to kind of fill with these where it makes sense. And you see here, this is between my copa my copa meat and the blue. I'm just going to fill that whole space, right? Okay. And then a few other things to think about. French bread, it's beautiful on a board. That to me is a much more traditional way to eat cheese and meats. If you travel a lot, you'll see, fresh bread with a cheese selection is usually norm. With that bread, you could you could toast it. You could put a little garlic on it and make it a little crostini. You could buy crostinis. But fresh bread is always a great choice. I also like to think about, this is a English cucumber. And an English cucumber has smaller seeds than a traditional American cucumber. And it's a little bit milder in flavor. And so this is a great, I have a girlfriend who's keto everything. So she's not going to eat any of my crackers, right? And so when I know she's going to come, I'm going to give her another option to use. And for this, I just want to show you cutting on a bias. So this is an English cucumber. It comes normally almost the length of this cutting board here. And all I'm going to do is take my knife and cut it on an angle in order to create this bias cut instead of just a flat round, which frankly just isn't as sexy, right? I'm just giving you a little bit more. It's still a very thin cut, but I'm just giving you a little bit more to bite into. And so again, I'm going to treat this just like the rest of the crackers. They're kind of stacked on. I'm going to go onto my edges. And now you see we're starting to bring in a little bit more color. Let's bring you a little center. A little bit more color into our board.
Do you find that considering dietary options for other people kind of helps your creativity with the board?
Absolutely. That kind of challenge of what is this person going to eat? Endive is another great vegetable. You just cut it straight in half and break off those leaves. And that's great for hummus or pimento cheese. Again, any of those kind of dips is another great one. And it's beautiful. That's kind of laid out. And so, yeah, those sort of challenges, even I should have mentioned this earlier, but if you have anybody that doesn't eat pork, there are great beef, cured beef options that are out there. And so really think about who you're serving and what they would enjoy. And that will definitely add a lot to your boards. All right, apple. Can't have cheese without apples, right? I will actually say there are some cheeses that I find I don't love with an apple, but apples to me are just another vehicle. It's just another option and another way to pair. Here's how I cut an apple. So I take an apple and I cut it straight in half and then in half again. And I want to get rid of as much as this core as possible. So I'm going to lay it down and then put my knife at a 45-degree angle just to cut off as little of the apple as possible. So I'm only cutting that core. And then the rest of it, I'm going to slice straight down. And that gives me some beautiful cuts. That's last a little bit. Goes to the chef. So that's a great cut to go, like, say, with that goat cheese, right? They're kind of paired in size. And it gives us, again, another color kind of flavor profile. Apples, obviously, they will turn on you. So you want to cut those late in your process. I'm going to cut one more. So again, I did a quarter cut and I want to take my knife at a 45-degree angle and cut just that core off. Put it down and just slice through the rest of it. And then I'm just going to stack them on top of each other. Find a spot. Let's go right here in the middle. We're going to lay them out. All right. Okay. So that's most of our vehicles, right? Coming, how do we are getting things to our mouth? Now we're going to fill in with combinations. So this is where on that menu sheet, you saw I listed like crunchy, sweet, salty, acidic, all these different flavor profiles is what we want to think about at this point. And really, you can't go wrong. You can really go anywhere. So let's talk through some of my favorites. This is a jam that I'm going to use. Yep. It's a fig and orange spread that I absolutely love. It goes with everything. I'm just going to take the top off of it and sit that baby right in. Don't do more work than you need to. I've got some blackberries that I love for not just the flavor, the sweetness that they provide, but also just the color complement to what we have going. So I'm going to put them in this ramekin here. All right, y'all sit pretty. Let's see what else we've got. I have some strawberries. It's strawberry season, right? It's also stone fruit right now is amazing. Peaches, nectarines, all of that would be great compliments on your board. So with a strawberry, all I've done is wash it so far. And what I'm going to do is just cut. I'm not cutting all the way through to the top. I'm having that the greenery act as my holder, right? And I'm cutting the rest of the way through that strawberry so that I can fan it out a bit, right? Gives you something beautiful to look at. And also it's very practical. If you put this on your plate, you can easily take a piece off really easily, add it to a piece of cheese, and now you're tasting that flavor combination instead of biting into a whole strawberry, which might be a bit much. All right, so I'm just going to pick a few places. I've pre-cut these, so you can see I can just fan them out a little bit. And you see how I'm starting to fill these holes that we've got between our pieces. There's no kind of right or wrong. But I also don't want anything by itself. So I'm always like, if I'm gonna put something there, it's gotta have like 2 or 3. Can you grab the grapes from the refrigerator? Oh, you can probably right behind you. Perfect. Thank you. All right, last strawberry will go right over here. So I've kind of filled that back space from that piece of cheese. All right, grapes, another thing, right? Cheese, grapes, wine, we're all in the same family. You want to prep your grapes a little bit. So you don't want to have like a full piece of a full bunch of grapes sitting right on your board, right? Because you don't want people like trying to pick off individual grapes. It just doesn't make sense. So what I've done is I've taken scissors, I've washed these grapes already, and I took scissors and I just follow the line of the grapes of the bunch that's already separated. And I'm just taking the 3 or 4 that are already together. So I've got a few of those here. So here's a bunch. Here's another one, right? And I'm just going to build those with the stem side down. So I get all the beauty of the grape, but when someone reaches in to grab it, they're not going to be surprised by grabbing 50 grapes at once or one by one, because that's also horrible. And so these sort of things really just help fill in. Oh, I've got a big hole here on this side. Let's go here. Fill in different areas on your board. And this is how we get kind of that harvest overflowing look that I like. All right, so those are our grapes. All right, let's talk acidic. I got to tell you, these are my favorite things in the world. Mm-hmm. I can eat olives and pickles. Oh, just ridiculous amounts. Okay. So olives, I love to do at least 2 kinds of olives. It gives a little bit of variety. They do all taste different. So this is a perfect place for when you're walking through Trader Joe's or some little cute, store in Asheville or whatever, and you see a little bottle of olives. This is when you buy the little bottle of olives just to try and put it on a board. So today I've got some Trader Joe's Kalamata olives, and I've also have, these are colossal garlic stuffed olives, which I can eat a barrel of these by myself. So this is another place where I tend to think about the people that I have that are going to be using this board. I have one girlfriend who doesn't like olives. I still like her. We still invite her to things. No shame. But if she's going to be there, then I know I'm going to put the olives in a container so that they don't touch other stuff for her, right? Otherwise, though, feel free to put them out anywhere you like. So I'm going to take these colossals and put them here. Now you want to consider pitted olives as much as possible. I know that's always not the case. If you know you have olives with a pit, then you want to provide a little container on the side that someone can discreetly put those pits in, okay? So those are the colossal with the garlic already in them. And I'm going to put the Kalamatas, since my girlfriend's not here, I'm going to put them directly onto my board. And you'll see for stuff like this, I like to mound it up a bit. So it looks, again, it feels like a bounty. It feels overflowing. Can you see on this side? Let's do this in. So I've got some crackers over here, some cheese on one side. I'm gonna rearrange that a little bit, make myself a hole, and I'm gonna fill that up with some olives. All right, so olives in place. For pickles, you can absolutely use a standard dill pickle. Cornichons are a little bit more, has a little bit more of a bite in their acidity. And they're usually, these that I have here were also marinated with some onion as well as some pickled vegetables. Also, another thing, if you're the type of person, I have a friend who's a gardener and he pickles his own vegetables. This is when you pull out the pickled vegetables because they're absolutely perfect on a board. Pickled okra, pickled onions, anything like that is going to be in a great flavor profile. So for these, I just like to kind of pick a spot, stack a few on top of each other. Again, I'm going vertical instead of horizontal. Let's get more on that side. And let's go center. All right, so we got pickles in a few spots that you'll be able to pick up, all right? And then one of my favorites that I love to surprise people with, these are caper berries. I'd love if in the comments, tell me if you've had a caper berry before. They are in the same family as capers, like you would have on fish, but they're actually not derived from the exact same plant. So they grow on different plants. But this berry, basically to me, it tastes like the ocean, similar to a caper, right? You want that kind of salty feel. Inside, they have a ton of little seeds, little berries, but you eat the entire thing without the stem, right? So I love to take these, put a few on top of each other. And
that stuffed olives are great too.
Oh, yes, yes. Oh, anything in the Greek family would be, they do antipasti in a beautiful way. So I love just that stem going straight up. And that is something that I'm really going to make sure to encourage people who have never tried it before to at least try it, to take one and take a bite. And surprisingly, they tend to love it. So a few of those on the plate. All right. This I listed on your menu. It is something that I'm going to encourage you to absolutely pick up the next time you're in a store and you see them. These go by a lot of different names. They're called sweet drops. They're called teardrops, but they are a tiny little pepper. They are of the pepper family, but they're like a beautiful palate cleanser. So when I have something like a blue cheese on my plate that I know has a lot of flavor to it, I love adding these. One, because again, similar to these peppers, people don't expect them. And there'd be a little bit of hesitancy at first to try them. But once they try them, everyone loves them. I've yet to have anybody try it and be like, nope, I'd rather not have any. So please grab some the next time you're in the store. This package literally came from Publix. It's not even, you don't need to even go to like a fancy Whole Foods or anything for it. All right, we are so close. So we've got acidity down. We've got sweetness down with all of the fruit. The only thing I think we're missing is crunch. So let's talk nuts. So I've got two nuts here. This is a Marcona almond. These are really a staple for any board. They're just fantastic. Really consider putting them on. They're great. Again, that kind of palate cleanser, but also the saltiness that they bring to a bite is really nice. So those are almonds in 2 corners. And then I'm gonna do a candied nut. So this is candied pecans. Yeah.
Is stone brown mustard a good idea?
Oh, yeah. So with a mustard, I would just put that in a ramekin, right? Put it in something, not necessarily directly on my board. If I'm building a board like this, if you're doing more of a traditional board that you would get like at a restaurant, they might put it directly onto that board. Mustard, though, is a great thing. Oh, these left and right. Mustard, though, is a great thing to ask your cheesemonger that you're buying that cheese what it would pair nicely with. If you know you want to go towards that flavor profile, that'd be a nice thing to ask and get a cheese that works really nicely with mustard. But the stone ground mustard, especially because that's going to give you those little mustard seeds in them, and it's going to just be a beautiful flavor.
And you've mentioned that a couple times, so just quickly explain what a cheesemonger is.
Oh, a sommelier of cheese. Oh. That's exactly what it is. Yep. So if you Google any, cheese store in your city, the guy behind the counter is a cheesemonger. And so he can absolutely help you with anything you need. So last few things that we're going to consider. I want to fill this very last ramekin with, this is honeycomb honey. Now, if you had, let's say, a little pot of honey, put that right on, right? Put it directly on, no problem. Honeycomb is a bit different look and feel, right? It's not every day that people get to enjoy some honeycomb. And honeycomb is fully edible. And I'm putting this right next to my blue cheese to encourage people to put that right on the blue because that's a perfect pairing. And you know what? I'm just going to leave that knife there. I'm going to do a little bit more. All right. What? Oh, I got one more thing. I don't even know if I have room for it. So I'm going to put that knife right there for that honey. So at this point, we're pretty close. I got one last thing. And when I was at Whole Foods, they had some beautiful figs. Again, it's a seasonal thing. I think it's great to add anything of the season. And figs are just one of those things that people know and are comfortable with, but hardly ever buy for themselves. And so this, to me, a board is a moment to kind of do something a little bit special, a little bit different. I'm literally putting these right on top of what's already there. Let's see, we'll put one more over here. And let's put one on this side. All right, so we got figs. So let's talk about final touch would be, how are we going to do all of this? So you already saw me put one knife here for that honey. I'm going to add a different sort of knife. It's actually a cheese knife for this, this blue. And I want to break up this blue a bit. So literally research has found that people don't want to be the first one to cut into a cake. Right. Same with a block of cheese. If you just sit a block of cheese someplace, it will be there at the end of the night. So I'm going to open it up a bit, right? Get you that blue. And I'm going to leave that knife right there. Let's see. We can also, I've got silver tongs, which are beautiful. I'm going to put them here for my peppers. And I'm going to do a little spoon for my jelly there. And let's use one more tong on this side for anything you might want, olives or anything. Now, when I know it's just friends, I'm assuming that everyone's going to use their fingers and just, grab. But you can absolutely look at, some bamboo, little tongs, little forks. There's also more traditional, like toothpick style little forks that you could actually go ahead and fork anything that you'd like. And then these are a little bit larger cocktail forks. The color would be a bit much for me on this sort of board, but they're perfect for when you're doing a larger board where you have a lot of different people, and you just want to be a little bit more sanitary. That's great to consider. And then one final thought. I know there's a lot of, cheese knives and different accoutrements that you can use. They all have a purpose, and I definitely would say as you're building your cheese palette and the cheeses that you like to use, find out how best to cut them. This is my most recent acquire, because I had a cheese that I noticed the cheesemonger was cutting very thin slices. It was of the Pecorino family, and that's how he gave it for me to taste. And I asked him, I was like, should that be the way I'm cutting it? Because that's hard to do at home without an actual instrument. He's like, yes, you do not, with certain cheeses, you want it to almost just lay on the tongue and, disappear. Or, I'm thinking of a word here, but you want it to dissolve on your tongue very easily, right? As opposed to biting into a hunk of certain kinds of cheeses. So this is another one that you can actually, with this wire, you can change the depth of the cheese that you're cutting. And for some cheeses, you want to do that. So don't feel like you have to have these sort of things. You saw me use just a chef's knife today. But as you build out your cheeses and what you like to use, add those to your profiles, all right? So let me move. Oh, I always think I'm done, and then I'm kind of not done. So last thing I'm going to add are some fresh thyme. I like adding fresh herbs, again, just for, honestly, for just the layering of it all and the feeling of freshness. And thyme adds so much flavor and smell to your board. You can also, rosemary is a great option to add toward the end. Rosemary is not as edible in this sort of situation, where if someone put a few leaves of thyme onto a cracker with some cheese, it actually would taste beautifully. All right, so we've got some herbs. You can also use fresh flowers, edible flowers on your board. My only caution there is be cautious about pulling it directly from your yard, just because of pollution and that sort of thing. And consider just buying edible flowers. But surprisingly, roses are edible. Like, there are a lot of edible flowers that are out there. Tulips are edible. That could be another great way to just kind of finish off a board. I love how everybody's around me eating right now. All right, so we've got a full finished board.
This is amazing. And so realistically, if you prep ahead of time, this is something that can be accomplished in an hour, hour and a half.
Yeah, and this is also a big board. I mean, I'm feeding easily 4 to 6 people at a party with other food, maybe even 8 to 10 people with this board. So if you're in party prep mode and you do this early in the day, and can fit it back in your refrigerator, that's perfectly fine. I'd say you only want it to sit out for maybe 30 minutes before your event, just so nothing starts to sweat before your guests actually arrive. But yeah, with some prep work, you should be able to do it in about an hour.
So if there's anyone who'd like to enter the contest, I put the number in the text, in the message board. Go ahead and send over a picture. Don't be shy. But this is, I love this because this is one of the things that no matter what when you have a party, people are always like, I'm gluten-free. I don't eat meat. I don't eat pork.
Yes.
This is something that can be a crowd pleaser no matter what someone's dietary restrictions or preferences are.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why I love them so much for parties or just I tell kids, I tell my friends who have young kids, just put out a, a
Oh
healthy
yeah.
board,
Yeah.
something that they can graze and grab during the day. And then you don't have to worry about them just eating junk, and they feel like they can come and get it
Yeah.
because, you know, you can eat as much fruit as you want, or cucumbers or carrots or whatever. So
And
really,
that's
really good.
actually more of the traditional way.
Mhm.
So charcuterie and cured meats, like so many things, I reckon that often a lot of times I connect it to soul food. That cured meats came out of right needing to use the entire animal, and how do we preserve this animal to be used for as long as possible. But you would go into a farmer's home, and on their kitchen table would be a piece of French bread and some meat and some cheese. And that's just out all the time. And so having this sort of thing in a simplified version for young people to graze on all day when you get home from work and make yourself a little bored. Like, to me, it's just creating those little moments of little tiny bits of perfection.
So quickly before we end, I did pull out the wine. I brought a wonderful Oregon Pinot Noir because I think that Pinot Noir goes well with pretty much anything on a board. But what are some of your favorite wine pairings for your charcuterie boards?
I tend to drink red wine.
Mhm.
I love a Malbec. To me, it just goes with everything. But oftentimes, like, I don't like necessarily to drink red wine during the summer.
Yeah.
So I'll go with a rosé.
Yeah.
Very easily. But anything, really, I haven't had a bad wine pairing.
Yeah.
Like, you can put almost anything with it.
Right.
And I think as you get used to, just like you do with wine, you'll get used to the things that are your favorites.
Right.
And you'll introduce them to your friends, and they'll become their favorites. And you'll know, oh, I can quickly go to the store, grab these 10 things, and put together a quick board for my girlfriend coming over, right? So it'll be that same sort of effortlessness after a little while. It's just getting started.
Right. Well, we are going to vote really quickly, and we'll be back in about 30 seconds.
Ooh.
So let's go over here. All right, so Kelly is the winner. And Kelly will be sending you your prize this week. So thank you guys, and cheers. Thank you, Brandon, so much.
Thank you all
for volunteering your time and doing this for us this evening. This was wonderful, nice change, something different, and hope you guys enjoyed the program this evening.
Thank you, guys. Let me know if you have any questions. We'll stay on for a few more minutes.
Yes. If anyone has any questions, we'll stay on for a few minutes. Technical things, ingredients, wine pairings with boards, just throw it in the chat.
Quick question: where would you put popcorn? Kind of like I had some rosemary Parmesan popcorn this weekend, and I paired it with some wine, and it was incredible.
Rosemary popcorn, rosemary Parmesan popcorn.
Rosemary Parmesan. Yeah, it was a great flavor.
Oh my gosh! Did you and what'd you pair it with?
It was a white wine. It was a Chardonnay.
Beautiful.
And it went so well. Like I can have that all day.
So to me, it's that same sort of feeling when I'm thinking about cheese and meats and pairing them and like what. And I'll tell my friends even, I'd be like, okay, you're gonna want to use this cracker, put some jam on it, and then put this cheese with this. Like, I'll give them a bite to try and get that same sort of excitement in their mouth.
Yeah. I recently, I went to Charleston and went to a Trader Joe's in Mount Pleasant and tried a Scotch bonnet cheese. It had Scotch bonnet pepper.
Mm-hmm.
So good.
Really?
So good. And
how
I've been
hot
searching.
Was it?
I thought it was going to be really hot, but I think the dairy and the cheese really calmed the heat down a lot. So it was a great pairing. But I've been searching for that cheese ever since then. It was so delicious. Those are really good.
And I think that's why you build a relationship with a cheesemonger. You get to know a store, you get to know somebody so that you can come back and you can say, hey, remember this thing?
Yeah.
What do you have that's similar to it right now?
Yeah.
And so you can kind of recreate that.
And we were talking about different stores. I've discovered that, I guess Lidl is how you pronounce it, or Lidl.
Lidt.
Yeah. They have a lot of high-end cheeses and different meats and all of that in their store for a really, really good price.
Really?
Yeah.
It's like Aldi.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't been to an Aldi myself, so I can't speak to it, but I know people who swear by an Aldi.
Yeah.
And
I mean, they can get expensive.
It absolutely.
Yeah. So
I'm not the budget charcuterie board. I will be really honest. It is hard for me to build a board on a budget and to like think of a certain price point.
Yes.
Especially because I'm often building it as the centerpiece for folks coming over. So this is the main event, right?
Yeah.
But just to give you price range and all transparency, this board here is probably just under $200 with all of the meats and cheeses and everything here. And actually, like, I had this already myself, so we might be.
Well, that's what I was gonna say too. Like, when you're not entertaining, don't discount building with some things that you already have.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And there's some things I just keep on hand.
Yeah.
Every time I go to the grocery store.
Or, those baskets people give you at Christmas time and things like that you never really open. That's a perfect opportunity to throw some things on a board.
And to elevate them a little bit more.
I've opened up, the Ghirardelli chocolates that I've opened up, and spread them out on the board or line them up in a little row or whatever. So sometimes be creative with things that you already have.
And get used to, like I said, like a lot of this I'll keep on hand at the house. Publix has a 3-meat package right by the deli that I'll grab. And sometimes that's my breakfast, right?
Yeah.
2 pieces of meat and a little bit of cheese that I had left over. So a lot of this you can keep on hand always. And then you're just supplementing with maybe that one special cheese that you add to it. But yeah, you can have this all the time.
Right. Well, thank you again, Brandi.
Thank you, guys.
We're going to say good night, guys, and we will see you all next time.
Cheers. Have a good one. This is a good one.
Yeah, you got to.
I am drinking this.